There was a time when anyone would tremble upon hearing the name John D. Rockefeller. Not only was he the world's first billionaire, he's one of the richest people in human history, with a fortune equivalent to over $400 billion today. His empire, Standard Oil, became the most dominant monopoly in the world by brutally crushing competitors, taking control of multiple industries and treating business as if it was war. Here's what life was really like for the boy who rose from desperate poverty to become the most powerful businessman in America. If you use these to fall asleep, hit subscribe so you don't miss any. Comment where you're at and the time too. Kind of fun seeing all the different places. Someone from Iceland commented once and I had to Google what time zone that even is. We're heading to the 1800s in a minute. First, though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second. Adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. It's pre-dawn in upstate New York, 1845. The bitter cold seeps through the cracks in the wooden walls of the farmhouse. You're stirring awake on your corn husk mattress, the scratchy wool blanket barely keeping the chill at bay. Your body knows it's time to get up. Farm work waits for no one, not even a 6-year-old kid. The first thing that hits you is the hunger, not the normal kind of hungry you might feel now, lying in your comfortable bed. This is the hollow, constant ache of someone who never quite gets enough food. Your stomach is making that weird gurgling noise again. You're John D. Rockefeller, and right now, you're about as far from a billionaire as humanly possible. The floor is ice cold against your bare feet as you climb out of bed. No central heating here, just a faint glow from the kitchen hearth that barely touches the corners of the house. Your breath comes out in visible puffs. A rooster crows outside, and you hear your mother already moving around, probably saying her morning prayers. The Rockefellers are strict Baptists. God comes before breakfast, always. John, time to fetch water. Your mother's voice calls from the kitchen. She sounds tired. She's always tired. This isn't like your warm bathroom with running water and indoor plumbing. No, you're about to grab a wooden bucket and walk to the well, break the ice on top and haul that water back to the house. Your arms will ache halfway there. Your fingers will go numb. But if you don't do it, nobody drinks or washes today. This was daily life for the richest man in American history. Weird to think about, right? I spent way too long researching 19th century rural hygiene habits for this, like concerningly long. And let me tell you, the Rockefeller family wasn't exactly living the high life. Their farmhouse was barely holding together. The clothes they wore were patched and repatched, and everybody was hungry pretty much all the time. But here's where it gets interesting. While you're hauling that water back to the house, your mind is already working. Even at 6 years old, you're thinking about money differently than other kids, like when you found that turkey nest in the woods last week. Remember that? You followed a wild turkey through the trees, watched where it went, and discovered its eggs. Most kids would have just taken the eggs for breakfast, but not you. You carefully gathered them up and brought them home to hatch. Why? Because a few turkeys could be sold for more than a bunch of eggs. You're already thinking about investments, about delayed gratification, about growing wealth. At 6, John, did you collect those eggs like I asked? Your mother's looking at you, dark circles under her eyes. Yes, Mom. And I've been thinking, you say, your voice small but determined. If we let some hatch, we could raise more turkeys and sell them at market for more money. She gives you a tired smile. Always with the schemes, aren't you? The turkey thing isn't just a cute story I made up, by the way. It actually happened. Little John Rockefeller was hustling poultry before most kids learned to tie their shoes, and he sold those turkeys for a tidy profit, then immediately started thinking about how to grow that little bit of money. So, what made John different? Why was this kid destined to become absurdly, disgustingly rich when his neighbors were all stuck in the same poverty? Part of it was his father, but not in the way you might think. Where's father, you ask, already knowing the answer. Your mother's face tightens. Business, she says simply. He'll be back when he can. The adults call your father Devil Bill behind his back, and it's not just because of his charm. William Avery Rockefeller is what people in the 1840s politely called a scoundrel, what they less politely called a complete waste of skin. He's off somewhere right now selling fake medicine to desperate people, calling himself Dr. William Livingston. He peddles bottles of mysterious liquid that supposedly cures cancer, fixes broken bones, makes you irresistible to the opposite sex, and probably whitens your teeth while it's at it. Imagine growing up knowing your dad is basically a con artist. That's John's childhood. He said he'd be back with money, your mother says, but her voice lacks conviction. Sometimes Bill does come back with money. He'll show up in the middle of the night, roaring drunk, tossing candy to the kids and pressing cash into your mother's reluctant hands. He'll stay for a week, maybe two, being loud and charming and filling the house with his presence. Then he'll vanish again. Sometimes for months. Your stomach rumbles as you chew on a piece of dry bread for breakfast. Your father's been gone for 6 weeks now. The money he left behind ran out 3 weeks ago. I'm going to check the turkey eggs, you announce, and your mother nods. Outside, in the rickety coop you built yourself, 3 turkey eggs are starting to crack. You watch, fascinated, as tiny beaks poke through. This is literally your investment hatching in front of you. Your mind races with calculations, how much you can sell them for, how many more you could breed, how long it would take to double your money. You're 6 years old, standing in the freezing cold, watching turkey eggs hatch and thinking about compound interest. That's not normal, dude. The weirdest part? While Bill is off being the worst, John develops an almost obsessive honesty, like the moral pendulum swung completely in the opposite direction. His mother drilled religious values into him and he took to them with scary intensity. Waste not, want not, she'd say, scraping every last molecule of food from her plate. A penny saved is a penny earned, as she carefully recorded every single expense in her little book. These weren't just cute sayings to John, they were survival. They were the difference between eating and going hungry. But then something happens that changes everything. You're 10 years old now. It's 1849 and the entire town is whispering. Your father has been accused of something bad, something involving a young woman. The details are kept from the children, but you see your mother crying when she thinks no one is looking. Within days, you're packing your meager belongings. The family has to leave town. The disgrace is too much. Where are we going? You ask your mother. Moravia, she says. We're starting over. Starting over becomes a pattern. The Rockefellers move from town to town, always one step ahead of Bill's reputation, and with each move, more responsibility falls on young John's shoulders. By 12, he's basically running the family finances. By 14, he's making loans to neighbours, and say, with interest, of course. I interviewed a historian about this, and she told me something fascinating. John's account books from when he was a teenager still exist. This kid was meticulously tracking every penny that came in and went out. He'd loan a neighbour 50 cents and note the 7% interest due in a month. He was a human calculator before calculators existed. Finally, the family settles in Cleveland, Ohio. It's 1855, and you're 16 years old. Your father's visits have become even rarer. He has another family now, a whole secret second wife and life that your mother doesn't know about. She never will. I need to find work, you tell your mother one evening. Real work. You've been helping on the farm, selling turkeys, doing odd jobs for years, but college isn't an option. There are 5 kids in the family now, and someone has to put food on the table. That someone is you. What kind of work, John? She asks. You straighten your carefully mended jacket. I'm going to work for a merchant or a bank, somewhere I can learn about business. The next morning, you make a list of every substantial business in Cleveland. You put on your one good shirt, slick down your hair, and set out with absolute determination. Your first stop is the railroad office. You walk in, back straight, voice steady despite your youth. I'd like to apply for a position as a bookkeeper, you tell the man at the desk. He looks up, sees a skinny 16-year-old and literally laughs in your face. Son, you're not even old enough to shave. Come back in 5 years. This happens at the next place too, and the next, and the next. You're how old? The bank manager asks incredulously. 16, sir, but I'm good with numbers. Very good. He's already shaking his head. Come back when you're a man. 6 weeks, 6 long weeks of rejection. Every morning you get up, put on that same shirt and try again. Most people would have given up after the first 10 rejections. You're on number 30-something and still going. Then, on September 26th, 1855, you walk into Hewitt and Tuttle, a small produce commission firm. They need a bookkeeper. You show them your handwriting, which is impeccable. You demonstrate your quick mental math. Can you start today? The owner asks. You blink, surprised. Yes, sir. Right now, sir. Good. Get to work. He doesn't mention salary. For the rest of his life, John Rockefeller celebrated September 26th as Job Day. Not his birthday, not Christmas. This day, the day he got his foot in the door of the business world. He considered it the most important day of his life. The work is grueling. You're at the office from 7 in the morning until often 9 or 10 at night. Your eyes burn from squinting at columns of numbers. Your fingers are permanently stained with ink, but you're learning. Every transaction, every negotiation, every business practice, you're absorbing it all like a sponge. One day, your boss comes in with a check for $4,000, a staggering sum in 1855. He puts it in the safe and leaves for lunch. You know the combination. When he's gone, you open the safe just to hold the check in your hands. You stare at it, mesmerized by what it represents. I am bound to be rich, you whisper to yourself. Bound to be rich. This becomes your daily mantra. Every morning before work, you look in the mirror and repeat, I am bound to be rich. Not hoping, not wanting, bound. Like it's already decided, just waiting to happen. After 3 months, you finally get your first payment. $50 for 3 months' work. That's about 50 cents a day. But your bosses are impressed with your dedication. They raise your salary to $300 per year, roughly $11,000 in today's money. It's not much, but it's enough for independence, enough to help support your mother and siblings. And even with this tiny income, you immediately begin giving 10% to charity, something you'll continue doing for the rest of your life. I know, it's weird to think of the ultimate capitalist robber baron as charitable, but there are actual church records showing John's donations from when he was making basically nothing. The guy was complicated. For 2 years, you work your fingers to the bone at Hewitt and Tuttle. You master every aspect of the business, but then the economy slows down and one of the partners quits. Suddenly, all his responsibilities fall on you, but your salary doesn't increase. You start to see the writing on the wall. The business is struggling. It might not survive much longer. Most people would panic. You see opportunity. In your boarding house, you've become friends with a chemist named Maurice Clark who works nearby. He's 28, you're just 18, but you've impressed him with your business knowledge and work ethic. One evening, over a simple dinner, Maurice leans forward. I've been thinking of starting my own produce commission business, but I need a partner who understands the books. You don't hesitate. I'm your man. You'd need to invest $2,000, Maurice says. Can you raise it? $2,000 in 1857 was no small sum, about $70,000 today. You've been saving every penny, but it's nowhere near enough. I'll find a way, you say with absolute confidence, and somehow you do. You cobble together savings and loans. You approach people with such certainty that they can't help but believe in you. At 19 years old, you become co-owner of Clark and Rockefeller, a produce commission merchant. From farm boy to business owner in 3 years. The early days are brutal. You and Maurice work from dawn until midnight. You travel constantly, meeting with farmers and merchants, building connections. Your feet develop blisters on top of blisters. You sometimes sleep on sacks of grain when there's no time to go home. But the business grows and grows. Here's the crazy part. You guys need more capital to expand, so you come up with this absolutely wild strategy. You go around Cleveland publicly saying that Clark and Rockefeller is looking to invest $10,000 in something. You don't have anywhere near that money, but you create the impression of success. And it works. Banks suddenly want to lend to you. The successful-looking business gets the credit it needs to actually become successful. It's basically fake it till you make it, 1850s style. Then the Civil War breaks out. As a devout Baptist, you strongly oppose slavery. The Union cause matters to you, but you also have 6 mouths to feed at home. Your mother and siblings still rely on your income, so instead of enlisting yourself, you pay $300 for a substitute soldier. This was legal back then, and you even equip several more Union soldiers out of your own pocket. Meanwhile, the war creates an economic boom in the northern states. Cleveland becomes a strategic location for the Union. Food prices inflate dramatically. Your produce business quadruples almost overnight. By 1862, you and Maurice clear a profit of $17,000, over $500,000 in today's money. Not bad for a 23-year-old who started with nothing, but something even bigger is about to land in your lap. One evening, a man named Samuel Andrews comes to your office. He's a young English chemist with an interesting proposition. Before electricity, people lit their homes with oil lamps. Traditionally, this oil came from whales, but whaling was expensive and difficult, and some whale species were being hunted to near extinction. But in 1859, people had discovered you could extract rock oil or petroleum by drilling into the ground, and it burned just as well as whale oil. Andrews has a secret process for refining this crude oil using sulfuric acid, turning it into something called kerosene, which burns cleaner and brighter than regular oil. He needs investors to build a refinery in Cleveland, which is conveniently located just a day's ride from the Pennsylvania oil regions. You and Maurice look at each other. You've got money to spare now thanks to the war boom. Why not diversify? You lend Andrews $4,000 to set up his refinery, considering it a side venture while you continue with your produce business. But within a year, something unexpected happens. The oil refinery starts making more money than your main business. A lot more money. We need to talk, you tell Maurice one day, ledgers spread open before you both. Look at these numbers. The oil business is wildly profitable, but it's also unstable and risky. The supply fluctuates dramatically. Sometimes there's so much oil that prices crash to 10 cents a barrel. Other times it seems like the oil fields are drying up and prices soar to $14. Many people think oil is just a temporary fad that will soon run out. But you see something different. You see the future. We should sell the produce business, you say. Go all in on oil. Morris stares at you like you've lost your mind. That's insane. The produce business is stable. Oil could be gone tomorrow. Oil isn't going anywhere, you say with that eerie certainty that's become your trademark. This is just the beginning. The argument goes back and forth for weeks. Finally, Maurice agrees to switch to oil, but he's nervous. The volatility of the market keeps him up at night. And then, in 1865, after a particularly rough patch in the oil business, Maurice reaches his breaking point. "I want out," he tells you. "Buy my share." The price he names is $72,500, about $135 million in today's money. It's a fortune, and to buy him out, you'll need to go into significant debt. Everyone thinks you're crazy to take on this risk. The oil business is too unpredictable, too dangerous. You could lose everything. But that same day, news arrives from Pennsylvania. A massive new oil field has been discovered. The market is about to be flooded with crude oil. Most refiners see this as a disaster. Prices will crash again. You see it differently. You see opportunity where others see catastrophe. "I'll buy your share," you tell Maurice, your voice steady despite the fear you're feeling inside. You're 26 years old. You've just gone all in on one of the riskiest industries in America, and now you need to find a way to crush your competition if you want to survive. The foundation of the world's greatest fortune was about to be laid, and it all started with that scared, hungry kid on a corn husk mattress. But how John Rockefeller went from ambitious young businessman to the most feared monopolist in American history, that's where things get really interesting. The morning sun filters through the window of your small Cleveland office. It's 1867, and you're staring at your ledger books with intense concentration. You've renamed the company Standard Oil, and you're plotting domination while most of your competitors are just trying to survive. This is what's wild about John Rockefeller. While everyone else saw the oil business as chaotic and unpredictable, he saw patterns, opportunity. He had this freakish ability to look at the same market everyone else was looking at and see something completely different. You push back from your desk and walk to the large map on your wall. Small red pins mark every competing refinery in Cleveland. Blue pins show the railroad routes. Green pins indicate your growing network of buyers and suppliers. To you, this isn't just a map. It's a battlefield. "Mr. Rockefeller," your clerk knocks softly. "Mr. Flagler is here to see you." And this is where the story takes a turn. Henry Flagler enters your office, and you immediately stand to greet him. He's about 10 years older than you, impeccably dressed, and radiates confidence. But there's something else about him, a certain ruthlessness in his eyes that matches your own. "John," he says with a fancy handshake, "I've been looking at your operation. Impressive for a young man." "Thank you," you reply, gesturing for him to sit. "But I have plans for much more." What most people don't realize is that Rockefeller didn't build his empire alone. Henry Flagler was just as important to the creation of Standard Oil as John was. The two men were eerily similar: religious, disciplined, detail-oriented, but Flagler had one quality that would change everything. He approached business like it was war. "The problem with this industry," Flagler says, leaning forward in his chair, "is that there are too many players, too much competition. It drives prices down, makes the whole business unstable." You nod. "Exactly my thinking." "So what's the solution?" Flagler asks, though his smile suggests he already knows your answer. "Consolidation," you say without hesitation. One company, large enough to control the market, stable prices, predictable supplies. Flagler's smile widens. "And who do you think should be that company?" You don't blink. "Standard Oil." Look, I've read through a ton of business histories, and this partnership between Rockefeller and Flagler was genuinely terrifying for their competitors. These guys weren't just trying to build a successful business, they were systematically planning to eliminate everyone else in the industry. So it's early 1868, and you're sitting in your office with Flagler mapping out a strategy that would make Machiavelli blush. "The railroads are our key," Flagler says, tracing a finger along the rail lines on your map. "They're desperate for consistent business." And this is where things get crafty. At the time, oil was transported by train, and three major railroad companies dominated the routes: the New York Central, the Erie, and the Pennsylvania Railroad. Flagler explains his idea. What if we guarantee them a certain volume of shipments? In exchange, they give us a special rate, a secret rate. Your eyes narrow. How much lower than the official rate? Flagler grins. Half, maybe less. Okay, so let me explain what's happening here, because it's kind of brilliant and kind of evil. Rockefeller and Flagler are about to negotiate what were called railroad rebates. Basically, they'd pay the official shipping rate that everyone else paid, but then the railroad would secretly give them back a portion of that money, like a discount no one else knew about. So their plan was pretty simple but devastating. 1. Get secret shipping discounts from the railroads. 2. Undercut all competitors on price, since their costs are lower. 3. When competitors go bankrupt, buy their refineries for pennies on the dollar. 4. Repeat until you control everything. Within months, you've negotiated deals with both the New York Central and the Erie railroads. In exchange for guaranteed daily shipments, Standard Oil gets a 75% discount on the official rates. Your competitors are paying $2.40 per barrel shipped. You're paying around 60 cents. Of course, these deals are kept strictly secret. If your competitors knew, they'd demand the same rates or complain to the government. The actual meeting with the railroad executives was something straight out of a movie. Picture this: a private room in Cleveland's most exclusive hotel, cigar smoke hanging thick in the air, 4 men, you, Flagler, and 2 railroad executives, huddled around a small table speaking in hushed tones. Gentlemen, you say, your voice soft but commanding, Standard Oil can guarantee you 60 carloads of refined oil every day without fail. The railroad men exchange glances. That kind of consistent volume is unprecedented. In exchange, Flagler continues, we require special consideration on rates. One of the railroad men shifts uncomfortably. What you're suggesting isn't conventional. You lean forward, your eyes intense. Neither is what we're offering. Stability, predictability in an unpredictable market. They agree. Of course they agree. And just like that, you've tilted the playing field in your favor. With your shipping costs now dramatically lower than everyone else's, you can sell your kerosene for less than your competitors and still make a higher profit margin. It's only a matter of time before they start to crumble, but you're just getting started. While all this business maneuvering is happening, you've also settled into domestic life. In 1864, you married Laura Celestia Spellman, a woman who shared your Baptist faith and disciplined nature. By 1868, you have 2 children, with more to come. Despite your growing wealth, you live modestly. Your house in Cleveland is comfortable but not ostentatious. You don't drink, smoke, or gamble. Your main indulgences are your church donations and the simple pleasure of playing with your children in the evenings. Shouldn't we get a bigger house? Laura asks one evening as you're reviewing your account books at the dining table. You could certainly afford it. You look up, considering. What we have is sufficient. Better to reinvest the money where it can grow. She smiles slightly. Always the businessman. Always, you agree. This is something that always gets me about Rockefeller. The guy was becoming insanely wealthy, but he lived like a middle-class minister. No flash, no extravagance. Every penny was accounted for, every expenditure questioned. He was building an empire with the discipline of a monk. Back at Standard Oil, your strategy is working better than even you expected. The lower prices you're able to offer are putting immense pressure on your competitors. Some are already approaching you about selling out, but then something happens that threatens to derail everything. The discovery of massive new oil fields in Pennsylvania. Suddenly, there's so much crude oil on the market that prices collapse. Oil that was selling for $4 a barrel now goes for $2.40, and many predict it will fall even further. Your competitors are panicking. Nearly 90% of oil refiners are losing money. You and Flagler, however, see this as the perfect storm, a chance to consolidate the industry even faster than you'd planned. Most of these refineries are operating at a loss, Flagler points out, reviewing the industry reports. They're desperate, which makes them cheap to acquire, you finish his thought. One evening, in late 1871, you're working late at your office. The lamp casts long shadows. As you methodically update your ledger, there's a knock at the door. It's Tom Scott, president of the Pennsylvania Railroad, the one major railroad you don't have a deal with. Mr. Rockefeller, he says, removing his hat, I believe we have mutual interests to discuss. Scott proposes something even more ambitious than your previous railroad deals, a secret alliance between the largest railroads and a select group of the largest refiners, with Standard Oil at the center. They call it the South Improvement Company, or SIC. Under this arrangement, Standard Oil would not only get a 50% rebate on transportation costs, but would also receive a payment, called a drawback, on the shipments of any competitors who weren't part of the alliance. Let that sink in for a second. Your competitors would be paying full price to ship their oil, and then the railroad would give you a portion of that money. It's like if Burger King had to pay McDonald's a fee every time they sold a Whopper. You're even promised detailed information about your competitors' shipments, how much they're shipping, where it's going, who they're selling to. This is no longer just business. This is warfare. The South Improvement Company deal would effectively give you a stranglehold on the entire industry. Anyone outside the alliance would be squeezed to death by the higher shipping rates and the invisible tax they were paying to you. It solves our problems at a stroke, Flagler says excitedly after Scott leaves. The entire industry stabilized under our control. You nod slowly. It's perfect. Too perfect, perhaps. Your caution was justified. By early 1872, rumors of the alliance begin to spread. When people read in the newspapers that shipping rates for the three most important railroads had doubled overnight, they knew exactly who to blame. The backlash is immediate and fierce. Thousands take to the streets in protest. Oil producers in the Pennsylvania oil regions organize a boycott of any refinery suspected of being part of the South Improvement Company. Without a supply of crude oil, your refineries are useless. After just 2 months, the South Improvement Company is disbanded, a public relations disaster. But here's the thing, even though the SIC failed, the mere rumor of its existence created a panic in the industry. Everyone assumes Standard Oil still has secret deals with the railroads, whether true or not, and you decide to use that fear to your advantage. In a period of just 6 weeks, known later as the Cleveland Massacre, you approach 22 of the 26 oil refining companies in Cleveland and give them an ultimatum: sell to Standard Oil or be crushed. You walk into each competitor's office with the same offer. Standard Oil will buy them out, paying not in cash but in Standard Oil stock. The alternative is to face Standard's lower prices, superior technology, and perceived railroad advantages. Mr. Rockefeller is here to see you, the secretary announces, and the refinery owner's face goes pale. You enter, hat in hand, the picture of politeness. Good afternoon. I think you know why I'm here. The refinery owner, a man named Reynolds, who you've known for years, gestures to a chair. John, let's not dance around it. You're buying everyone up. Consolidation is the future, you say calmly. This industry can't survive with dozens of small refineries undercutting each other. Reynolds laughs bitterly. So instead, one big refinery will undercut us all until we're gone. You open your briefcase and remove some papers. I'm prepared to offer you $45,000 for your refinery, paid in Standard Oil stock. Reynolds's eyes widen. His refinery is worth at least $150,000. That's robbery. That's the future, you correct him. Your refinery is losing money every day. How long can you keep operating at a loss? 6 months? A year? And what will your refinery be worth then? You slide the papers across his desk. Standard Oil stock, on the other hand, will only increase in value as we grow. Reynolds stares at the papers for a long moment. And if I refuse, your expression doesn't change. Then we wish you the best of luck competing in the new market. We don't know exactly what went down in these meetings, but we do know the results. Within those 6 weeks, 22 out of the 26 refineries in Cleveland sold to Standard Oil, most for a fraction of their actual value. Whenever anyone sold out, you gave them only 2 options: sign a contract prohibiting them from ever re-entering the oil business, or join Standard Oil as an employee or partner. Many chose to join, which meant you now had the brightest minds in the industry working for you instead of against you. By mid-1872, you'd achieved something unprecedented. Standard Oil now controlled 85% of Cleveland's oil refining capacity. You'd gone from 1 refinery to 22 in less than 3 months. The funniest part about all this, John was only 33 years old. 33. While most guys his age were still figuring out what to do with their lives, he had already built the foundation of one of the greatest business empires in history. But just as you're consolidating your Cleveland dominance, disaster strikes. On September 18, 1873, a financial panic hits Wall Street. The stock market collapses, banks fail across the country, the US economy plunges into a depression that will last 6 years. For the first time, oil prices drop not because of oversupply, but because of collapsing demand. Standard Oil has to temporarily shut down all but 2 of its Cleveland refineries. By 1874, a single barrel of oil is trading for just 48 cents, less than the cost of the wooden barrel it's stored in. It seems like the entire industry might collapse, but unlike your competitors, Standard Oil has carefully managed finances, excellent credit with banks, and modernized, efficient refineries. Even in these bleak conditions, you're still able to operate at a small profit while others bleed money. And as always, you see opportunity in crisis. You call Flagler into your office one cold January morning in 1874. The streets of Cleveland are nearly empty, businesses closed or operating at reduced hours. The Depression has left the city, like much of America, in a state of economic paralysis. Henry, you say, spreading a map on your desk, it's time to expand. Flagler looks at you like you've lost your mind. Expand? Now? In the middle of a depression? You trace your finger across the map, touching Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York. Everyone is struggling. Refineries in these cities are operating at a loss, burning through their reserves just to stay alive, which means they're cheap, Flagler says slowly, beginning to understand. Exactly, you nod. We've conquered Cleveland. Now we take the rest. And that's exactly what you do. You initiate a nationwide buyout campaign, and whenever anyone is reluctant to sell, you resort to the same indirect tactics that worked in Cleveland. You buy up all the available barrels so competitors can't package their oil. You reserve all available railroad capacity so they can't ship their product. You use your railroad connections to get their shipping rates raised to ruinous levels. Then, when they're on the verge of bankruptcy, you swoop in with an offer to save them by buying them out, at a steep discount, of course. Picture this scene: a small refinery owner in Pittsburgh sitting in his cold office. It's been weeks since he's received a shipment of barrels for his refined oil. His workers are idle. The banks won't extend more credit. His wife has already pawned her jewelry to keep the business afloat. Then you walk in, impeccably dressed despite the economic depression, calm, confident. I understand you're having some difficulties, you say, removing your gloves. The refinery owner looks up, his face haggard. You engineered those difficulties. You don't deny it. I've come with a solution. By the time the Depression begins to lift in the late 1870s, Standard Oil controls over half of Pittsburgh's refining capacity, the largest refineries in Philadelphia, and has secured a dominant position in New York as well. To further strengthen your grip on the industry, you begin building a network of pipelines to transport oil. These pipelines reduce your reliance on the railroads and further lower your costs. With these pipelines stretching across the eastern United States like tentacles, Standard Oil earns a new nickname among its enemies, the Octopus, and you, John D. Rockefeller, are only just beginning. By your late 30s, you're already one of the wealthiest men in America, and you've laid the groundwork for a monopoly that will soon control 90% of the oil refining in the entire country. The ruthless tactics that built this empire have made you many enemies. The largest newspaper in America calls Standard Oil the most cruel, impudent, pitiless, and grasping monopoly that ever fastened upon a country. But in your mind, you're bringing order to chaos, stability to volatility. You're not destroying the oil industry, you're saving it from itself. You stand at your office window watching the snow fall on Cleveland. Your competitors fear you. The public is beginning to hate you, but you're convinced that what you're doing is not just good business. It's your divine calling. Mr. Rockefeller, your secretary interrupts your thoughts. Mr. Flagler needs to see you immediately. There's a situation with the Pennsylvania Railroad. You turn from the window, straightening your jacket. Tell him I'll be right there. The battle for complete control of America's oil industry is about to enter its most vicious phase, and at its center stands you, the quiet, religious man who treats business like war. The clock on your office wall shows nearly midnight. You're still at your desk, lamplight casting shadows across the papers spread before you. It's 1877, and the conflict with the Pennsylvania Railroad has reached a breaking point. You tap your pencil against the ledger. For years, the railroads have been essential to your business. Now they're becoming a liability. Mr. Rockefeller? Your assistant knocks softly. Mr. Flagler asked me to give you this. He hands you a telegram. Tom Scott, president of the Pennsylvania Railroad, has done something unforgivable. He started building his own oil refineries. So, you say quietly, folding the telegram, war it is. For the railroad companies, the oil industry had been a tremendous source of business. But as Standard Oil began laying its vast network of pipelines, the railroads faced the terrifying prospect that their most important customer was making them obsolete. So Tom Scott decided to fight back by entering the oil business himself. Bad move. You gather your top executives the next morning. The room is tense, faces grim. These men understand what's at stake. Gentlemen, you say, your voice mild as ever, the Pennsylvania Railroad has declared war on Standard Oil. They've chosen to compete with us directly. Flagler leans forward. What do you propose, John? You smile slightly. We're going to crush them. I'm not exaggerating when I say what happened next was one of the most brutal corporate battles in American history. Rockefeller launched what was essentially a three-pronged attack. First, Standard Oil cancelled all shipments with the Pennsylvania Railroad and redirected them to their competitors. Second, Standard lowered the price of kerosene so dramatically that the Pennsylvania's new refineries couldn't possibly make a profit. Third, and this was the killer, Standard convinced the New York Central and Erie railroads to lower their shipping fees to ridiculous levels purely to bleed the Pennsylvania Railroad dry. The Pennsylvania Railroad was forced to make an impossible choice, either match these rock-bottom rates and lose money on every shipment, or maintain their prices and watch their customers flee to cheaper competitors. Tom Scott was trapped, and he knew it. He was literally paying refineries to use his railroad just to maintain some semblance of market share. But the consequences of this corporate war spread far beyond just Standard Oil and the Pennsylvania Railroad. The B&O Railroad, another major line, also had to slash their rates and lay off workers to compete. And here's where things get really dark. In July 1877, with wages cut by 20% and workers being laid off by the hundreds, railroad employees across the country went on strike. It turned violent almost immediately. Have you seen the papers? Flagler bursts into your office one morning, his face pale. You look up calmly. I have. The headlines scream about riots in Pittsburgh. Strikers have torched Pennsylvania Railroad property. 500 freight cars, 120 locomotives, and 27 buildings are now smoldering ruins. Dozens are dead. And while you didn't directly cause this violence, your business tactics helped set the stage for it. Flagler paces nervously. This is getting out of hand, John. Perhaps we should ease the pressure. But you see an opportunity even in this chaos. The Pennsylvania Railroad is more vulnerable than ever. Now is not the time to relent, you say. Now is the time to end this. A few days later, Tom Scott, once the titan of the railroad industry, sends a representative to your office. The Pennsylvania Railroad is ready to surrender. You orchestrate a massive deal with all the major railroads. Standard Oil will give the Pennsylvania Railroad 47% of its shipping business. The New York Central, the Erie, and the B&O will share the rest. In exchange, you demand a very large secret rebate on the Pennsylvania's rates, detailed information about competitors' shipments, and 20 cents for every barrel that passes through any of the railroads. The railroads have no choice but to agree. By 1879, Standard Oil effectively controls the entire oil industry and has tremendous influence over the railroads as well. But there's an unexpected consequence of your victory. Tom Scott, broken by his defeat, suffers a stroke shortly after the deal is signed. He dies within a year, and this creates a powerful enemy for you. Scott had been a mentor to a young Andrew Carnegie, who is now the dominant force in the American steel industry. Carnegie blames you for Scott's death and vows revenge. The King of Oil versus the King of Steel, two of the wealthiest, most powerful men in America, now locked in a bitter personal rivalry. Carnegie once reportedly said of you, "Rockefeller is the only man who makes me uncomfortable when he enters a room." You felt similarly about him. Carnegie reminds me of myself, only he lacks balance. Despite all this corporate warfare, your personal life remains remarkably stable and modest. You move your family to New York City in the late 1870s, but rather than building some grandiose mansion, you purchase a comfortable but unpretentious home. Your daily routine is almost monastic in its discipline. You wake early, spend time in prayer and Bible reading, eat a simple breakfast, and then head to your office. You don't drink, smoke, or engage in the extravagant social life that consumes many of New York's elite. Your favorite pastime is simply playing with your children in the evenings. One of your employees once remarked that you'd rather be down on all fours with your children than at the most elegant dinner in New York. This strange contrast between your ruthless business practices and your gentle family life puzzles many. But in your mind, there's no contradiction. Business is business. Family is sacred. And despite your growing notoriety, you continue to donate at least 10% of your income to religious and charitable causes, a practice you've maintained since you received your very first paycheck. Back at Standard Oil, you're now focusing on vertical integration. Until this point, you've primarily pursued horizontal integration, taking over competitors who do the same thing you do. Now you want to control every step of the supply chain, from oil wells to refineries, to transportation, storage, and retail. This wasn't just about greed, it was about control, about building a system so perfectly integrated that nothing was left to chance. In 1885, a massive new oil field is discovered in Lima, Ohio. It seems like a blessing at first. More oil means more business for Standard, but there's a problem. It smells like a skunk died in a barrel of rotten eggs, your chief chemist explains, wrinkling his nose at a sample of the Ohio oil. Even after refining, this skunk oil, as it's called, has such a high sulfur content that it's practically worthless. It trades for as little as 15 cents per barrel because no one wants to buy kerosene that makes their house smell like death. Most refiners give up on the Ohio oil fields immediately. Not you. Find a way to remove the sulfur, you tell your team of chemists. Whatever it costs. For almost a year, they work on the problem. Finally, they develop a process to remove the sulfur, making the oil usable. Standard Oil is suddenly the only company able to profitably refine and sell this cheaper form of oil. This gives you a massive advantage when, a few years later, oil begins to be discovered in massive quantities throughout the Midwest and Southwest, in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and California. And this ties into another major development, the rise of the automobile. As cars begin to replace horse-drawn carriages, the demand for gasoline, previously considered a waste product of the refining process, skyrockets. Once again, your foresight pays off spectacularly. While others were focused solely on kerosene for lamps, you'd built an empire that was perfectly positioned to fuel the automotive revolution. By the 1890s, Standard Oil controls approximately 90% of all oil refineries and pipelines in the United States. Your personal wealth has grown to unimaginable levels, and yet the larger Standard Oil grows, the more enemies it creates. Small businessmen crushed by your tactics. Politicians offended by your power. Journalists outraged by your monopolistic practices. You start to take a more hands-off approach to the daily operations of Standard Oil, delegating more responsibilities to trusted lieutenants. Part of this is strategic. By distancing yourself personally from some of the company's more aggressive tactics, you create a buffer between yourself and public criticism. But it's also practical. The empire has grown too vast for any one person to manage directly. Standard Oil now has operations in multiple states and countries, thousands of employees, and a dizzying array of subsidiaries and associated companies. "Mr. Rockefeller seems tired today," one of your secretaries whispers to another as you pass by. You pretend not to hear, but it's true. You're approaching 50. The stress of building and defending your empire is taking its toll. You've developed digestive problems, and your hair has fallen out completely. Despite being one of the richest men in the world, you now subsist primarily on crackers, milk, and a few simple vegetables, all your stomach can handle. But even as your personal involvement in day-to-day operations decreases, your wealth continues to grow at an astonishing rate. With Standard Oil's near-total dominance of the oil industry and the increasing importance of oil in the American economy, money flows into your coffers in ever-increasing amounts. You begin to think more seriously about how to manage this vast fortune. For a man as methodical as you, simply piling up wealth for its own sake isn't satisfying. There must be a purpose, a plan, a system. That's when you hire Frederick Gates, a Baptist minister, to help you manage your philanthropic activities. It's an unconventional choice, a minister rather than a financial expert, but it proves to be brilliant. Years later, when asked who the greatest businessman you ever met was, you'll point to Frederick Gates. Gates helps you organize your charitable giving and make strategic investments that grow your non-oil wealth substantially. He also serves as a mentor to your son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., who's now finishing his education at Brown University. Together, Gates and Jr. begin to transform your haphazard personal investments into a systematic portfolio that will eventually multiply your fortune far beyond what even Standard Oil could generate. One of their most significant investments is in iron ore. On Gates' advice, you purchase vast tracts of the Mesabi Range in Minnesota, which contains some of the richest iron deposits in North America. This puts you on a collision course with Andrew Carnegie, who needs iron ore for his steel mills. The rumor spreads that you're planning to build your own steel mill to compete directly with Carnegie. It's not true, at least not yet, but the mere possibility terrifies Carnegie. Mr. Rockefeller, your secretary interrupts your thoughts one afternoon. Mr. Carnegie's representative is here to see you. The meeting that follows leads to one of the most lucrative deals in American business history. Carnegie agrees to buy a minimum of 600,000 tons of ore from your mines every year and to transport it exclusively through your railroads. In exchange, you agree never to enter the steel business, and Carnegie gets a secret rebate on the ore, ironically similar to the railroad rebates that helped you build Standard Oil. The deal is so profitable for both of you that a wall of silence descends around it. Neither of you wants competitors or the government to know just how much money you're making, but someone else has noticed the immense potential of this partnership. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America. Morgan sees an opportunity to create something even bigger than Carnegie Steel or Standard Oil. He envisions a steel monopoly that combines Carnegie's mills with your iron ore mines and several other major steel companies. One winter morning in 1901, Morgan sends a representative to meet with you. Mr. Morgan would like to discuss the purchase of your Mesabi Range holdings, the man says. You surprise him by replying, "He should speak with my son about that." Morgan is initially dismissive of having to negotiate with your 27-year-old son. He assumes Junior will be an easy mark, but when Morgan meets with Junior and bluntly asks, "What's your price?" Junior isn't intimidated. "Mr. Morgan," he says calmly, "I think there must be some mistake. I did not come here to sell. I understood you wished to buy." By insisting that Morgan name the price first, Junior gains the upper hand in the negotiations. Morgan, taken aback by the young man's composure, has to reconsider his approach. Eventually, Morgan offers $88.5 million in US steel stock for your iron ore holdings, the equivalent of over $3 billion today. You accept, and US Steel becomes the first billion-dollar corporation in American history, and you now own a substantial portion of it. While all this is happening, Standard Oil continues to grow more powerful and more profitable. The rise of the automobile has turned gasoline from a waste product into liquid gold. Your empire now spans the globe, with operations in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. But as the 19th century gives way to the 20th, a new threat emerges. The progressive movement, led by journalists and politicians determined to break the power of monopolies, sets its sights on Standard Oil. They call men like you robber barons, industrial monarchs who've built empires through questionable means. The press portrays you as a cold, calculating villain who crushes smaller businesses without remorse. The irony is that as these attacks intensify, you're actually less and less involved in the day-to-day operations of Standard Oil. You're in your 60s now, in semi-retirement, focused more on your philanthropic activities than on business. But to the public, you are Standard Oil, and Standard Oil is increasingly seen as the enemy of the common man. One evening, you're sitting in your library reading the latest newspaper articles about yourself. They're not flattering. "Father," Junior enters the room, concern on his face. Have you seen what they're saying? You fold the newspaper calmly. I have. Doesn't it bother you? He asks. You consider the question for a moment. The public will form its judgment. If that judgment is just, I have nothing to fear. If it's unjust, you shrug. Well, I've faced worse. But privately, you're concerned. The political winds are shifting. There's talk of new antitrust legislation, of presidential candidates promising to break up monopolies like Standard Oil. And there's one journalist in particular whose work is causing you significant discomfort. Ida Tarbell. Tarbell's father was one of the independent oil refiners who went bankrupt during Standard Oil's rise to power. Now she's writing a devastating exposé of your business practices, publishing it in monthly installments that the American public devours eagerly. What makes Tarbell's work so damaging is that it's meticulously researched. She's not just slinging mud, she's revealing actual documents, testimony from former Standard Oil employees, details of secret deals and strong-arm tactics that had previously been hidden from public view. Your policy is never to respond directly to critics, so Tarbell's accusations go unchallenged. This only seems to validate them in the public's mind. As the new century dawns, you find yourself in an unusual position. You're wealthier than you've ever been, with your fortune growing daily. You control, directly or indirectly, a significant portion of the American economy, and yet your public image has never been worse. Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft both make breaking up Standard Oil a key part of their political agendas. The Sherman Antitrust Act, previously seldom enforced, is now being wielded against your company. The legal battles begin, and they will stretch on for years. Standard Oil fights in court after court, winning some cases, losing others, but always facing more legal challenges. You watch these developments with growing detachment. Your son and Frederick Gates are increasingly handling both your business and philanthropic affairs. Your health is fragile. You spend more time at your estates in New York and Florida trying to recover your strength. Sir? Your butler interrupts your breakfast one morning in 1909. There's a telephone call for you. It's Mr. Gates. You pick up the receiver. Yes, Frederick? John, Gates says, his voice tense. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear the government's case against Standard Oil. You're silent for a moment. The Supreme Court, the final arbiter. After this, there will be nowhere else to appeal. I see, you say finally. Keep me informed. You hang up and return to your breakfast, your face betraying no emotion, but inside you know that the empire you spent your life building is facing its greatest threat yet. The stage is set for the most significant antitrust case in American history. The outcome will not only determine the fate of Standard Oil, but will reshape the entire American business landscape for generations to come. And all of this from the boy who once followed a turkey into the woods to steal its eggs. The morning sun streams through the windows of your mansion in Pocantico Hills, your estate north of New York City. It's 1910, and at 71 years old you've grown accustomed to a certain routine. Wake before dawn, light stretching, a simple breakfast of toast, milk, and fruit. Reading the Bible. Prayer. But today there's a tension in your body that the familiar routine can't quite dispel. Sir, your butler says, entering with the morning newspaper, I thought you might want to see this immediately. The headline screams across the front page, Supreme Court to rule on Standard Oil case tomorrow. You take the paper with a steady hand, though your heart rate picks up slightly. Tomorrow. After years of legal battles, it all comes down to tomorrow. Will you be going into the city today, sir? The butler asks. You consider for a moment. No, I think I'll play golf instead. This is not a joke. On the day before the Supreme Court decided the fate of Standard Oil, Rockefeller actually went golfing. The man had ice in his veins. As your chauffeur drives you to the golf course, you gaze out at the Hudson River. The Standard Oil case has been winding through the courts for years now. President Theodore Roosevelt, who called men like you malefactors of great wealth, made breaking up your company a personal crusade. The government's lawsuit alleges that Standard Oil has violated the Sherman Antitrust Act by monopolizing the oil industry and restraining trade. The evidence against you is substantial. Records of railroad rebates, predatory pricing, corporate espionage, and secret ownership of supposedly independent competitors. Your lawyers have fought brilliantly at every turn, but you've known for some time that the tide of public and political opinion has turned against you, against monopolies in general. At the golf course, your regular partners are waiting, wealthy men like yourself, though none quite as wealthy. "Big day tomorrow, John," one says as you approach. You smile pleasantly. Every day is a big day when the Lord grants you the health to enjoy it. They exchange glances. Your calm in the face of potential disaster is unnerving. "You're not worried?" another asks incredulously. You select a club, considering. Worry never solved anything. The Supreme Court will decide as it will. I've done my work. Now it's in God's hands. The funny thing is, you meant it. This wasn't just a show for your golf partners. Rockefeller had this almost eerie acceptance of things beyond his control. He'd spent decades building Standard Oil with meticulous planning and ruthless execution. But once something was truly out of his hands, he had this ability to just let it go. The next morning, you're having breakfast when the telephone rings. It's Frederick Gates. "John," he says, his voice tight with tension, "the court has ruled." You set down your spoon carefully. "Go on." "They've ordered Standard Oil to be dissolved, broken into separate companies within 6 months. There's a long pause. Gates is clearly waiting for an explosion of anger, despair, something, but the seconds tick by in silence. "John, are you there?" "Yes," you say calmly. "Thank you for letting me know." You hang up the phone and return to your breakfast. On May 15th, 1911, the Supreme Court found Standard Oil guilty of monopolizing the oil industry through illegal business practices. The court ordered the company to be split into 34 separate entities, each with its own board of directors. After 41 years, your empire had been dealt what appeared to be a fatal blow. That afternoon, reporters gather outside your estate, hoping for a comment. You rarely speak to the press, but today you decide to make an exception. You step out onto the porch, immaculately dressed as always, your bald head gleaming in the spring sunshine. "Mr. Rockefeller," one reporter calls out, "what's your reaction to the Supreme Court's decision?" You smile slightly. "I have nothing to say." "Sir, they've ordered Standard Oil to be broken up. Doesn't that upset you?" You regard them for a moment. "Have a pleasant day, gentlemen." And with that, you turn and go back inside, leaving them baffled by your apparent indifference. The truth is more complicated. The Supreme Court's decision is certainly not what you wanted. The company you built from nothing, the enterprise you crafted with such care and protected so fiercely, is to be dismantled. But there's an irony here that few people understand yet. By forcing Standard Oil to break up into dozens of smaller companies, the government may have actually done you a massive financial favor. See, the thing about monopolies is they're often undervalued by the market because they're seen as risky, precisely due to potential antitrust action. Their stock prices don't always reflect their true worth, but when you break a monopoly into smaller, more focused companies, those new entities can sometimes be valued much higher collectively than the original monopoly was. You still own about a quarter of Standard Oil's stock. When the company splits into 34 different companies, you'll get your proportional share in each of them. And once those companies are open to public trading without the shadow of monopoly accusations hanging over them, well, the market might have some surprises in store. 3 months after the Supreme Court's decision, you're sitting in your library with Frederick Gates and Jr. reviewing the latest financial reports. "This can't be right," Junior says, frowning at the papers. Gates smiles slightly. "I've checked the figures 3 times. They're accurate." You lean back in your chair, a hint of amusement in your eyes. "So breaking up Standard Oil has made us richer, significantly richer," Gates confirms. "The combined value of your holdings in the successor companies has almost tripled since the breakup was announced." The stock market had reacted to the breakup by driving up the value of the newly independent companies. Investors were excited about the potential of these focused, efficient businesses freed from the legal troubles that had plagued Standard Oil. The government's attempt to punish you had instead made you wealthier than ever. By the end of 1911, your net worth was approaching $900 million, the equivalent of about $25 billion today, adjusted for inflation, and it was still growing. You were closing in on becoming the world's first billionaire. The next day, you're having lunch with Junior at your city residence. He's 37 now, a serious man with a strong sense of responsibility. "Father," he says, setting down his fork, "what do you intend to do now?" You look at him questioningly. "About the money," he clarifies. "It just keeps growing, even after the breakup. Something needs to be done with it." You nod slowly. This has been on your mind as well. For years, you've been giving substantial sums to various charities and educational institutions, but your wealth is increasing faster than you can give it away through these traditional channels. "I've been thinking," you say, "about establishing a foundation, something permanent, something that will continue the work long after I'm gone." Junior's eyes light up. This is clearly an idea that resonates with him. "What sort of work, specifically?" "The root causes," you say, "not just treating symptoms of society's ills, but addressing their sources: education, medical research, public health." This is actually a pretty revolutionary idea for the time. Most wealthy people gave to charity, sure, but usually in a scattered, reactive way. Rockefeller was proposing something much more systematic and forward-looking. 2 years later, in 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation is officially established with an initial endowment of $100 million over $2.6 billion in today's money. Its mission is ambitious: to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. You appoint Junior and Frederick Gates to lead the foundation, with a board of distinguished scientists, educators, and public health experts to guide its work. "Sir," your secretary interrupts one afternoon, "Dr. Welch is here to see you." Dr. William Welch, a prominent physician and one of the directors of your foundation, enters your office with an air of excitement. "Mr. Rockefeller," he says, "I believe we've found a promising direction for our medical research funding." He proceeds to tell you about hookworm disease, a parasitic infection that affects millions of people, particularly in the American South. The disease causes anemia, weakness, and developmental problems in children. "The wonderful thing," Welch explains, leaning forward eagerly, "is that we know how to prevent and treat it. It's not like cancer or tuberculosis, where the medical science is still developing. With hookworm, we know what to do. We just need the resources to do it on a large scale." You listen carefully, asking occasional questions about costs, logistics, and expected outcomes. This is exactly the kind of project you've been looking for, one where a strategic investment can make a dramatic difference. "Draft a proposal," you say finally. "Let's make this happen." The Rockefeller Sanitary Commission for the Eradication of Hookworm Disease becomes one of your foundation's first major initiatives. Within a few years, it dramatically reduces the incidence of hookworm in the southern United States and establishes a model for future public health campaigns around the world. This is just the beginning. The Rockefeller Foundation goes on to fund the development of the yellow fever vaccine, establish the first schools of public health, modernize medical education, and support agricultural improvements that will eventually help feed millions. Your approach to philanthropy is the same as your approach to business: methodical, strategic, focused on maximum impact. You're not interested in having buildings named after you or receiving public accolades. You want results. Mr. Rockefeller, a reporter asks at a rare press conference, why are you giving away so much of your fortune? You consider the question. God gave me my money, you say simply. I believe the power to make money is a gift from God, to be developed and used to the best of our ability for the good of mankind. Despite your increasing focus on philanthropy, your wealth continues to grow at an astonishing rate. The successor companies to Standard Oil are thriving in the new automobile-centered economy. Your investments in mining, railroads, and banking are generating enormous returns. By 1916, you achieve what no one in history had achieved before. Your net worth passes $1 billion. You are the world's first billionaire. To put this in perspective, your wealth represents about 2% of the entire US economy. Adjusted for GDP, that would be equivalent to around $450 billion today, making you more than twice as rich as anyone currently living. But money means less and less to you personally. Your lifestyle remains relatively modest. You don't collect art or yachts or palatial homes around the world. Your pleasures are simple: family, golf, and watching your philanthropic work bear fruit. Father, Junior says one evening as you sit together in your library, I've been thinking about the future of our philanthropic work. Go on, you encourage. The foundation is doing excellent work globally, but I wonder if we should consider something more focused on individual development. Education, perhaps, but in a different way than the universities we've funded. Junior goes on to outline his idea for what will eventually become the General Education Board, focused on improving education at all levels, particularly for disadvantaged communities. You listen attentively, nodding occasionally. Junior has increasingly taken over the management of both your business and philanthropic interests. He's proven himself to be thoughtful, strategic, and deeply committed to using wealth for the public good. You've given this a lot of thought, you say when he finishes. He smiles slightly. I had a good teacher. Junior isn't just flattering you. Despite your reputation as a ruthless businessman, you've always been meticulous about education, both your own and others. Throughout your career, you've studied constantly, learning every detail of the oil industry and then of finance and investment. I'm considering a significant additional donation to the foundation, you tell him. Perhaps another 100 million. Junior's eyebrows rise. Even for you, that's an enormous sum. Are you sure? He asks. That would bring your total giving to over $500 million. You nod. Money is like manure. It's not worth a thing unless it's spread around, encouraging young things to grow. This was one of Rockefeller's actual sayings, by the way. The guy had a weird thing for farming metaphors. The next day, you're walking through your garden with your grandchildren. At 77, you still have remarkable energy, though your health has improved significantly since your partial retirement. Grandfather, one of the children asks, is it true you're the richest man in the world? You smile down at her. I believe the richest person is the one who is content with what they have. She wrinkles her nose. That's not a real answer. You laugh, a surprisingly hearty sound from such a reserved man. No, I suppose it isn't. You kneel down, slightly stiff but determined to be at eye level with her. Yes, people say I have more money than anyone else, but that's not what matters. What matters is what you do with what you have, whether it's a little or a lot. And what are you doing with yours? She asks innocently. Trying to help people, you say simply. Trying to solve problems that make life harder than it needs to be. This is the great paradox of John D. Rockefeller, the man who built his fortune through ruthless business tactics, who crushed competitors without mercy and manipulated markets to his advantage, was also genuinely committed to using that fortune to improve the human condition. Was it guilt, religious conviction, a desire to rehabilitate his public image? Probably some combination of all these factors, along with a sincere belief that wealth carried responsibility. As the First World War rages in Europe, your foundation focuses on relief efforts, particularly in Belgium, where millions face starvation under German occupation. You personally contribute millions to these efforts, working closely with future President Herbert Hoover, who is coordinating American relief work. The war accelerates the demand for oil products, particularly gasoline for military vehicles. The successor companies of Standard Oil see their profits and your wealth surge even higher. By 1918, as the war draws to a close, you're approaching 80 years old. Your health is surprisingly good for a man who spent much of his middle age plagued by digestive problems and stress-related ailments. You attribute your longevity to a simple diet, regular exercise, and freedom from worry. Worry, you often tell your grandchildren, never accomplished anything. In your sun-filled study at Pocantico Hills, you're reading through reports from the various foundations and institutions you've established. The Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, later Rockefeller University, is making breakthroughs in understanding infectious diseases. The General Education Board is transforming schools across America. The Rockefeller Foundation is extending its work globally. Frederick Gates enters with a new stack of papers. The latest reports from China, he says, placing them on your desk. The medical college in Beijing is making excellent progress. You nod, pleased. Your philanthropic work has increasingly taken on a global dimension. You believe that advances in medicine, education, and agriculture should benefit all of humanity, not just Americans. And this, Gates adds, handing you a newspaper, might interest you. It's an editorial criticizing your charitable giving as an attempt to whitewash your reputation and distract from how your fortune was made. You scan it briefly, then set it aside without comment. Such criticisms are nothing new. Many see your philanthropy as mere image rehabilitation, the robber baron trying to buy his way into heaven. But you've long since stopped concerning yourself with public opinion. Your focus now is on ensuring that the vast wealth you accumulated will continue to serve humanity long after you're gone. Frederick, you say, looking up from the papers, I've been thinking about our work in medical research. Yes? I want to expand it significantly. There are diseases we can defeat in our lifetime if we commit the resources. Gates smiles. After decades of working together, he still marvels at your ambition. I'll have the team draft some proposals. You nod, satisfied. The empire you built may have been dismantled, but your legacy is just beginning to take shape. As the sun sets over the Hudson River, casting long shadows across your estate, you stand at the window contemplating the journey that brought you here. From the poor farm boy with a talent for numbers to the richest man in the world. From the ruthless architect of America's most powerful monopoly to one of history's greatest philanthropists. It's been a life of stark contrasts and apparent contradictions, but to you, there's always been a consistent thread, the application of method, discipline, and strategic thinking to whatever challenge was at hand, whether building a business empire or solving global health problems. The boy, who once carefully raised turkeys to sell at market, had become the man who carefully designed institutions to improve human life on a planetary scale. And the story was far from over. The morning sun spills through the windows of your Florida estate. It's 1920, and at 81 years old, you've developed a comfortable rhythm to your days. Breakfast with Laura, your wife of 56 years. A few hours reviewing reports from your foundations. Golf in the afternoon. Dinner with family when they're visiting. Simple pleasures for a man who could buy practically anything. Your hands, spotted with age but still steady, sort through the morning mail. Most of it is addressed to your office in New York, but some personal correspondence follows you to Florida. One envelope catches your eye. It's from a small Baptist church in Georgia. You open it carefully. Inside is a letter from the minister thanking you for your recent donation that saved their building from foreclosure. You smile slightly. The donation was modest by your standards, just a few $1,000s, but it meant everything to that small congregation. These quiet, personal acts of charity still give you more satisfaction than the millions you pour into your foundations. "John," Laura calls from the sunroom, "are you joining me for coffee?" You tuck the letter into your pocket and join your wife. Laura has been your constant companion since 1864. She's known you as a struggling young businessman, as the most feared industrialist in America, and now as the world's greatest philanthropist. Through it all, she's remained the same. Practical, devout, unimpressed by wealth or fame. "What has you smiling this morning?" she asks, pouring you a cup of black coffee. You show her the letter. She reads it and nods approvingly. "Sometimes I think these small gifts do more good than the big foundations," she says. "Perhaps," you reply, "but the foundations can tackle problems too large for small gifts." This was the dual nature of Rockefeller's philanthropy, the personal and the institutional. He gave away dimes and nickels to people he met on the street, a habit that earned him both affection and mockery, while simultaneously funding institutions that would transform medicine, education, and public health on a global scale. The telephone rings, interrupting your coffee. It's Frederick Gates calling from New York. "John," he says, his voice tense despite the crackling connection, "have you seen the newspapers? The market is in trouble. The post-war boom is ending. The economy is showing signs of strain. Banks are failing in several states. It's not yet the Great Depression, but the warning signs are there. We should consolidate some of our positions," you say calmly, "move more into government bonds." This is one advantage of your age and experience. You've seen financial panics before, 1873, 1893, 1907. You know that markets rise and fall. You know how to protect wealth through the cycles. Junior is worried about the impact on our foundations if there's a prolonged downturn, Gates says. "Tell Junior not to worry," you reply. "The foundations have endowments large enough to weather any storm." After you hang up, you sit for a moment, considering. Your son has essentially taken over management of your business and philanthropic affairs. He's done well, better than you expected when he was a serious, somewhat sheltered young man entering Brown University. Junior lacks your killer instinct for business, but he has something perhaps more valuable for the task he's undertaken. A genuine, almost painful sense of responsibility to use the Rockefeller fortune for the greater good. A week later, you're back in New York for a board meeting of the Rockefeller Foundation. The discussion centers on expanding your international health programs. The success of the hookworm campaign has been remarkable, Dr. Rose, one of your medical directors, explains. We've essentially eliminated the disease in the American South. Now, we want to apply the same approach globally. You listen attentively as he outlines plans to combat malaria, yellow fever, and other infectious diseases across Latin America, the Caribbean, and parts of Asia and Africa. The cost, you ask when he finishes? $25 million over 5 years, he answers promptly. Some of the board members shift uncomfortably at the figure. It's an enormous sum, even for the Rockefeller Foundation. You nod thoughtfully. If the results will match those of the hookworm campaign, it's worth every penny. Junior, sitting beside you, smiles slightly. He knows you well enough to have anticipated your response. For all your reputation as a penny pincher in personal matters, you've never hesitated to invest heavily when you see potential for significant returns, whether in business or philanthropy. After the meeting, you and Junior walk slowly through Central Park. Despite your age, you still enjoy a good walk, though you tire more quickly than you once did. Father, Junior says, I've been thinking about creating a new venture, something focused on art and culture. You raise an eyebrow. Art has never been a particular interest of yours. Your taste runs to the practical, the useful. Go on, you say. I believe art and beauty are essential to human flourishing, just as health and education are, he explains. I'd like to establish a place in the city where art can be accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. This idea will eventually become the Museum of Modern Art, founded in 1929 with significant Rockefeller support. It's one of many ways that Junior's vision for philanthropy expands beyond your own, embracing culture, conservation, and historic preservation alongside your focus on health, science, and education. If you believe in it, you say after considering his proposal, then do it. You have both the resources and the judgment. Junior looks surprised, then pleased. Even in his 50s, your approval still matters to him. Thank you, Father. Later that evening, you're at home in your study when your butler announces an unexpected visitor, Charles Evans Hughes, the newly appointed Secretary of State under President Harding and a former Supreme Court Justice. Mr. Rockefeller, Hughes says as he enters, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. You gesture for him to sit. What can I do for you, Mr. Secretary? Hughes explains that the government is concerned about American access to oil in the Middle East, where British and French companies have secured most of the concessions following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. We believe it's in America's national interest to have a presence in the region, Hughes says carefully, and we believe Standard Oil of New Jersey might be the appropriate vehicle for that presence. You find this ironic. The government that broke up Standard Oil is now asking one of its successor companies to advance American interests abroad. I no longer control Standard of New Jersey, you remind him. I'm a shareholder, nothing more. Hughes smiles slightly. But your influence remains considerable, Mr. Rockefeller. A word from you would carry weight. You consider this. Though you've officially retired from business, you maintain connections throughout the oil industry. And despite your complicated relationship with the federal government, you're a patriot who believes in American leadership in the world. I'll make some inquiries, you say finally. No promises. Your influence does help pave the way for American oil companies to gain footholds in the Middle East, laying the groundwork for decades of US involvement in the region, for better or worse. As the 1920s progress, your public image begins to soften. The fearsome monopolist is increasingly seen as a benevolent grandfather figure. Your practice of handing out dimes to children and adults alike becomes widely known. Photographers capture you playing golf. attending church, or spending time with your grandchildren. There's strategy in this shift guided by one of America's first public relations experts, Ivy Lee, whom you hired to help rehabilitate your image. But there's also truth to it. You are genuinely devoted to your family, your faith, and your philanthropic work. In 1925, you celebrate your 86th birthday. Gifts and congratulations pour in from around the world. President Coolidge sends his regards. The King of England sends a telegram. Former employees, business associates, and beneficiaries of your foundations send letters by the thousands. All this fuss, you say to Laura as you look over the correspondence, for an old man who just happened to live a long time. She gives you a knowing look. You know very well it's not just for living a long time. You shrug, uncomfortable as always with direct praise. Most of it is the work of the foundations now, Junior's work, not mine. The foundations wouldn't exist without you, she points out. This is true, of course. By this point, your total charitable giving has exceeded 500 million, the equivalent of tens of billions in today's money. The Rockefeller Foundation alone has an endowment of over 150 million and is active on 5 continents. The stock market crash of 1929 and the ensuing Great Depression test even your immense fortune. The value of your investments drops significantly, though you're insulated from the worst effects by your conservative financial management and diversified holdings. More importantly, the crash affects the endowments of your foundations. Income from investments declines just as the need for charitable work increases dramatically. You're 90 years old when the crash occurs. Many assume you'll reduce your giving in response. Instead, you do the opposite, increasing your personal donations to help offset the reduced income from endowments. Sir, your financial advisor protests when you instruct him to liquidate certain investments to fund additional gifts. These market conditions are temporary. If you wait, your assets will recover their value. And how many will suffer while we wait, you ask? No, we'll give now when the need is greatest. During these years, your relationship with Junior deepens and evolves. The somewhat distant father-son dynamic of earlier decades gives way to a partnership and friendship. You come to rely on his judgment not just in business and philanthropy, but in personal matters as well. When Laura, your wife of 61 years, passes away in 1915, it's Junior who helps you through the grief, who ensures that her funeral is exactly as she would have wanted it, who makes sure you're not left alone in your mourning. She was very proud of you, Father. Junior tells you as you sit together after the funeral, not for the money or the success, for the good you've done with it. You nod, unable to speak. Laura had been your anchor, your counsel, your conscience. Her faith had helped shape your own. Her practical nature had kept you grounded even as your wealth reached stratospheric levels. As the Depression deepens, you witness how your philanthropic institutions respond to the crisis. The Rockefeller Foundation funds emergency relief efforts. The General Education Board helps keep schools open despite plummeting tax revenues. The Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research continues its work, producing discoveries that will save countless lives. In 1934, your grandson, Nelson, Junior's son, comes to visit you at your Florida estate. He's 26, ambitious, energetic, with a keen interest in both business and public service. He reminds you somewhat of yourself at that age, though with advantages you never had. "Grandfather," he says, sitting beside you on the veranda, "I've been offered a position in President Roosevelt's administration." This raises your eyebrows. The Rockefellers have traditionally been Republicans, and Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal represents a level of government intervention in the economy that makes you deeply uncomfortable. What position, you ask? Assistant Secretary of the Navy. You consider this. The Roosevelt family has a connection to the Navy Department. FDR himself served as Assistant Secretary under Wilson. And you want my advice? You ask. Nelson nods. I do. You gaze out at the Atlantic Ocean, visible in the distance. The country is in crisis. If you believe you can help, then political differences shouldn't stand in your way. Nelson takes the position, beginning a long career in public service that will eventually lead him to the governorship of New York and the vice presidency of the United States. As you enter your 90s, your daily routine becomes more limited, but your mind remains sharp. You follow the news closely, particularly developments in science, medicine, and international affairs. You continue to receive regular reports from your foundations and to provide guidance on major decisions. Your physical health, once so precarious, has actually improved with age and retirement from active business. The digestive problems that plagued you in middle age have largely subsided. Your doctors attribute your longevity to your disciplined lifestyle, your abstention from alcohol and tobacco, and your remarkable freedom from worry. Mr. Rockefeller, a reporter asks at a rare press conference on your 95th birthday, what do you consider your greatest achievement? You ponder the question for a moment. Is it building Standard Oil from nothing, becoming the world's first billionaire, the millions of lives saved or improved through your philanthropy, the ability to give, you say finally, to earn money for the benefit of my fellow man? The reporter looks somewhat disappointed by this answer, perhaps expecting something more specific or dramatic, but it's the truth as you see it. The wealth itself was never the goal. It was the means to an end. In 1936, as you approach your 97th birthday, you take stock of your life's work. Standard Oil, though broken up, spawned companies that continue to dominate the global oil industry: Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others. Your personal fortune, despite enormous charitable giving and the effects of the Depression, still amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars. Your foundations are transforming health, education, and scientific research worldwide. And yet, public opinion about you remains deeply divided. To some, you're a visionary who revolutionized industry and then turned his talents to solving humanity's most pressing problems. To others, you're the ultimate robber baron whose philanthropy can never fully atone for the ruthless business practices that built your fortune. Perhaps both views contain elements of truth. The same strategic mind, the same relentless drive, the same attention to detail that made you a feared competitor also made you an effective philanthropist. The same religious conviction that justified your accumulation of wealth also compelled you to give it away. As the sun sets over your Florida estate, you sit on the veranda wrapped in a light blanket despite the warm evening. Junior sits beside you, the two of you comfortable in silence. I received a letter from the foundation today, Junior says eventually. The yellow fever vaccine has been successfully tested. They believe it will save thousands of lives, perhaps millions eventually. You nod, satisfied. Yellow fever has been a focus of your medical philanthropy for decades. Good, you say simply. Very good. The quiet moments stretch between you, filled with the sound of waves in the distance and the evening calls of birds. Do you ever regret it? Junior asks suddenly. Any of it? You know what he's asking. The cutthroat tactics, the destroyed competitors, the political battles, the decades of public vilification. Regret is a waste of energy, you say after a moment. I did what I believed was right at the time, as did you. Junior smiles slightly. It's not quite an answer, but it's very much you. Practical, forward-looking, unwilling to dwell on the past. As darkness falls, you gaze up at the emerging stars, still amazed by the vastness of the universe despite all you've seen and done in your long life. From a struggling bookkeeper to the richest man in the world, from the architect of America's most powerful monopoly to its greatest philanthropist. It's been a journey of stark contrasts and apparent contradictions, but through it all, there's been a consistency of purpose, a methodical approach to every challenge, a deep conviction that wealth brings responsibility. The boy who once said, "I am bound to be rich," could never have imagined just how rich he would become, or what he would ultimately do with that riches. Morning light filters through the curtains of your bedroom at Ormond Beach, Florida. It's May 1937. At 97 years old, you've outlived almost everyone from your generation. The world has transformed beyond recognition since your birth in 1839. From horse-drawn carriages to automobiles, from whale oil lamps to electric lights, from a fractured nation fighting over slavery to a global power. Your nurse helps you sit up in bed. Your body has grown frailer, your movements more limited, but your mind remains remarkably clear. You can still recall details from business deals made 60 years ago, still follow the progress of your foundations, still recognize the faces of your great-grandchildren when they visit. "Good morning, Mr. Rockefeller," the nurse says cheerfully. "Would you like to sit on the veranda today? The weather is beautiful." You nod. For a while. Junior is visiting this afternoon. Your son, now in his 60s, still consults you on major decisions regarding the family's business and philanthropic interests, though day-to-day management has long since passed from your hands. On the veranda, overlooking the lush Florida landscape, you sip your morning tea and browse through the latest reports from the Rockefeller Foundation. The yellow fever vaccine, developed with your funding, is being distributed throughout Latin America. New medical schools, established with your grants, are training doctors in China. Agricultural programs are increasing food production in Mexico. Your butler approaches with a small stack of mail. "These arrived for you this morning, sir." You sort through them slowly. A letter from a former employee, now elderly himself, a note from one of your great-grandchildren, and an envelope bearing the seal of the President of the United States. Inside is a personal letter from Franklin Roosevelt, thanking you for your foundation's support of polio research. Roosevelt, crippled by the disease himself, has a personal stake in this work. Though you and the president have significant political differences on this issue, you find common ground. "Mr. Rockefeller," your butler interrupts gently, "Dr. Haggard is here for your morning checkup." Dr. Haggard, your personal physician for the past decade, enters with his bag. He's a kind man in his 50s who has the difficult job of maintaining the health of someone approaching the century mark. "How are we feeling today?" he asks, taking your wrist to check your pulse. "Well enough," you reply, "though I seem to tire more easily." The doctor nods. "That's to be expected, Mr. Rockefeller, but your heart sounds strong and your blood pressure is remarkably good for a man of your age." After he leaves, you return to the reports but find your concentration waning. Your mind drifts to the past, not to the business battles or the political fights, but to simpler memories. Your mother teaching you to count pennies at the kitchen table. Your first job as a bookkeeper. Laura on your wedding day, young and full of hope, your children when they were small. "Penny for your thoughts," says a familiar voice. You look up to see Junior standing at the entrance to the veranda. He's arrived earlier than expected. "Just remembering," you say, gesturing for him to sit. Your relationship with Junior has evolved over the decades. The somewhat stern father and dutiful son have become partners, then friends. You've come to respect not just his business acumen, but his vision for philanthropy, which in some ways has surpassed your own. The Foundation Board approved the new public health initiative for Africa, Junior tells you, accepting a glass of lemonade from the butler. Full funding for 5 years. You nod approvingly. Good, very good. And the Museum of Modern Art expansion is proceeding on schedule, he continues. Nelson is taking a particular interest in that project. Nelson, Junior's son, and your grandson, has emerged as a force in both the business and cultural worlds. You see in him some of your own drive and ambition, though directed toward different ends. He has a good eye for art, Junior adds, though I can't say I understand all of his modern tastes. This makes you smile slightly. Art has never been your particular interest either. Your aesthetic runs to the practical, the functional, but you've come to appreciate Junior's belief that beauty and culture are as essential to human flourishing as health and education. And how is the situation with Standard of California, you ask, referring to one of the successor companies to your old empire? Junior's expression grows more serious. The antitrust concerns are valid, I'm afraid. They've grown too aggressive in their acquisitions. You sigh softly. The lessons of Standard Oil's breakup seem to fade with each generation. The drive to dominate markets, to eliminate competition, to control rather than compete. It reasserts itself despite the legal guardrails put in place. Remind them what happened to us, you say. Better to adjust course now than face dismemberment later. As the afternoon progresses, you and Junior discuss family matters, foundation business, and world affairs. The situation in Europe concerns you both. The rise of fascism in Germany and Italy, Japan's aggression in China. The world seems to be sliding toward another great war. The foundation should prepare, you tell Junior. If war comes, there will be enormous needs. Medical, humanitarian. Junior nods. We've already begun contingency planning. As the sun begins to set, you feel fatigue settling over you. Junior notices your energy flagging. I should let you rest, he says, rising. I'll come back tomorrow. Stay for dinner, you insist. Tell me about the grandchildren. Over a simple meal, Junior updates you on the expanding Rockefeller clan, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, their education, their interests, their promise. The family has grown too large for you to keep track of everyone, but you listen with genuine interest. The Rockefeller name, once associated primarily with corporate power and wealth, is increasingly linked to public service, philanthropy, and cultural patronage. Your descendants serve in government, lead charitable organizations, support the arts, and yes, continue to prosper in business. David has a remarkable mind for banking, Junior says of his youngest son, your grandson. Chase has grown significantly under his guidance. David Rockefeller, still in his early 40s, is already making his mark at Chase National Bank, which will eventually become Chase Manhattan, and then JP Morgan Chase, one of the world's largest financial institutions. And Winthrop? You ask about another grandson. Junior's expression is more measured. Still finding his way. He has potential, but he trails off diplomatically. Not every Rockefeller has your drive or Junior's sense of duty. Some struggle with the burden of the name and the expectations it carries. Some rebel against the family's conservative traditions. Some simply prefer a quieter life away from public scrutiny. The money can be a curse as well as a blessing, you observe. I've always believed that. It's something you've witnessed firsthand. Great wealth can distort values, destroy motivation, create a dangerous sense of entitlement. It's why you raised your own children with strict discipline and modesty despite your vast fortune. After dinner, as Junior prepares to leave, you ask him to help you to your bedroom. The day has tired you more than usual. Father, Junior says as he assists you to your bed, the university in Chicago is hoping you might attend the dedication of the new medical building next month. I told them I thought it unlikely, given your health, but promised to ask. The University of Chicago, which you founded in 1890, with an initial gift of $600,000, has become one of the world's premier research institutions. Your total contributions to it have exceeded $35 million over the decades. Send my regrets, you say, and my best wishes. Junior nods, understanding. At 97, travel has become increasingly difficult for you. Your world has contracted to this estate in Florida, with occasional visits to your home in New York when your health permits. Rest well, Junior says, squeezing your hand gently before departing. Alone in your room, you lie awake thinking about the remarkable journey of your life, from that poor farm boy in upstate New York to the richest man in the world, from the most feared businessman in America to one of its greatest philanthropists. Your mind drifts to a memory from childhood, following that wild turkey into the woods, finding its eggs, hatching them, raising the turkeys to sell. Your first entrepreneurial venture at just 6 years old, the beginning of a path that would lead to unimagined wealth and power. Was it all worth it? The battles, the criticism, the periods of illness brought on by stress, the newspaper cartoons depicting you as a monopolistic octopus, the congressional investigations, the Supreme Court's dismantling of your life's work? The answer isn't simple. You created tremendous wealth, not just for yourself, but for the American economy as a whole. You revolutionized the oil industry, making kerosene and later gasoline affordable and widely available. You established philanthropic institutions that have saved millions of lives and educated generations of students. But there were costs as well. Competitors crushed without mercy, political systems corrupted by corporate influence, environmental damage from unregulated oil production, the concentration of economic power in ways that sometimes threatened democratic principles. History will have to judge the balance sheet of your life. All you know is that you tried to follow what you believed was right. In business, in family life, in giving back. The next morning, you wake feeling unusually weak. Your nurse notices immediately. "I'll call Dr. Haggard," she says, concern evident in her voice. "No need to trouble him," you reply. "I'm just tired today." But the doctor is summoned anyway. After examining you, he takes Junior aside for a private conversation. You can't hear what they're saying, but their expressions tell you everything you need to know. Your time is approaching. Over the next few days, family members arrive from across the country. Your surviving children, your grandchildren, even some of your great-grandchildren. They gather around your bed, sharing memories, seeking wisdom, saying goodbye without explicitly acknowledging that's what they're doing. On May 23rd, 1937, you wake before dawn, as has been your habit for nearly a century. The pain in your chest is new, but not entirely unexpected. You've lived long enough to recognize the signs. "Get Junior," you tell your nurse quietly. When your son arrives, his face etched with worry, you gesture for him to sit beside your bed. "I've been thinking about the foundation," you say, your voice weaker than before but still clear. Junior leans closer. "Yes, father?" "The work isn't finished," you say. "It's only beginning." He nods, understanding what you're trying to tell him. The philanthropic institutions you've established together are not meant to solve all problems in your lifetime, or even his. They're designed to continue addressing human needs for generations to come. "I'll make sure of it," he promises. You close your eyes, suddenly very tired. "Good," you murmur. "That's good." Later that day, surrounded by family, you slip away peacefully. John Davison Rockefeller, the boy from the failing farm, the world's first billionaire, the great philanthropist, is gone at the age of 97. The obituaries are extensive, filling pages in newspapers around the world. They chart the remarkable story of your life, from poverty to unimaginable wealth, from cutthroat businessman to generous benefactor. They struggle to reconcile the apparent contradictions of your character. The ruthless competitor and the devout Baptist, the penny-pinching accountant and the man who gave away hundreds of millions. President Roosevelt issues a statement. The death of John D. Rockefeller removes from our national life a figure notable in industry and notable too in the great philanthropic enterprises which his fortune made possible. The funeral is held at the Riverside Church in New York City, which you helped fund. The service is simple, befitting your Baptist faith. No elaborate eulogies, no excessive displays of grief, just scripture readings, hymns and prayers. Afterward, you're buried in the family mausoleum at Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, near where you built your first oil refinery. But your story doesn't end with your death. In many ways, it's just beginning. The Rockefeller Foundation continues its global work in public health, scientific research, education, and humanitarian relief. During World War II, it funds refugee scholars fleeing Nazi persecution, supports medical care for displaced persons, and helps rebuild educational institutions destroyed in the conflict. After the war, the foundation plays a crucial role in the Green Revolution, developing and distributing high-yield crop varieties that prevent mass starvation in developing countries. It supports the development of vaccines for deadly diseases. It funds research that leads to breakthroughs in understanding human health and disease. The other institutions you established, the Rockefeller University, the General Education Board, the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, continue to advance human knowledge and well-being. The University of Chicago, which you founded, produces more Nobel Prize winners than almost any other institution in the world. The companies that emerged from the breakup of Standard Oil, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others become some of the largest and most profitable corporations in global history. The antitrust action that seemed like a devastating blow to your empire ultimately increased its total value dramatically. Your descendants continue the family traditions of business success and philanthropy. They serve in government, lead corporations, establish their own charitable foundations, support the arts, and engage in conservation efforts. The Rockefeller name becomes associated not just with wealth, but with public service. Your methods and motives continue to be debated by historians, economists, and ethicists. Were you a visionary who brought order to a chaotic industry and then used your wealth for humanity's benefit, or a ruthless monopolist whose philanthropy was merely an attempt to whitewash a problematic legacy? Perhaps you were both. Perhaps the same qualities that made you successful in business, strategic thinking, relentless focus, attention to detail, also made you effective in philanthropy. Perhaps the religious convictions that justified your accumulation of wealth also compelled you to give it away. The contradictions and complexities of your character make you more interesting than either the cartoon villain or the sanitized hero. You were a man of your time who also transcended it, whose influence continues to shape the world long after your death. The boy who declared "I'm bound to be rich" could never have imagined just how rich he would become, or how that richness would extend far beyond money to include impact, legacy, and meaning. As you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll dream of this remarkable American life, from rural poverty to unimaginable wealth, from ruthless competition to world-changing generosity, from a world lit by whale oil to one transformed by petroleum, from a single oil refinery in Cleveland to a global philanthropic enterprise. And maybe you'll appreciate the simple comfort of your warm bed, free from the weight of billions and the responsibility they bring as you slip into peaceful slumber.